The folder was labeled College Accounts, Final, and inside were bank statements showing 2 transfers from my account I never authorized. $30. Then $12,000, both to my sister's name, both dated before I'd even graduated high school. My hands were shaking so hard the pages rattled, and I could hear my father's car pulling into the driveway. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me where you're watching from. My name is Emily, and I grew up invisible. Not literally, but close enough. My sister Charlotte was born when I was 2, and from that moment on, I became background noise. She was the baby, the special one, the one who needed more attention, more care, more everything. I told myself it was normal, but it wasn't. By middle school, the pattern was obvious. When Charlotte forgot her homework, she was creative and didn't fit the mold. When I forgot mine, I was irresponsible. When she crashed her car at 16, my parents bought her a newer one 2 weeks later. When I got a small dent at 17, I paid for the repair with money from my summer job at Dairy Queen. I kept score in my head. Charlotte. Everything. Me. Whatever was left. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I believed them when they said they loved us equally. I believed it so deeply that when they told me about the college fund, $50,000 each, saved since we were kids, I actually thought I mattered. So you girls can follow your dreams without drowning in debt, my dad had said. I held on to that promise for years. High school was hell for me, but I powered through. Straight A's, AP classes, robotics club, volunteer work. I did everything right because I thought if I was good enough, smart enough, responsible enough, they'd finally see me the way they saw Charlotte, but they never did. Charlotte barely graduated. She partied through senior year, skipped class, got suspended twice for cheating, and my parents just smiled and said she was finding herself. I got into a state school for engineering on a partial scholarship. Charlotte got into a private liberal arts college that cost twice as much, and my parents were thrilled for her. The summer before I left for college, I sat down with them to talk about the fund. I had everything organized. My acceptance letter, my housing contract, my course schedule. I thought this would be simple. But the second I mentioned money, my mom's smile went tight. About that, my dad said, and I felt the floor tilt under me before he even finished. Charlotte had some unexpected expenses after graduation. He continued, we had to help her out. My throat went dry. How much is left? I asked. My parents glanced at each other. That glance told me everything. About 8,000, my dad said. 8,000 out of 50. I waited for them to say they were joking, that this was some kind of test, but my mom just touched my hand and said, You're smart, Emily. You'll figure it out. You always do. And I knew I wasn't their daughter. I was their backup plan. I didn't cry, not then. I just nodded, went upstairs, and started researching student loans. By the end of the week, I'd borrowed $42,000, the exact amount they'd helped Charlotte with, but I didn't know that yet. College was brutal. I worked 2 jobs while carrying 18 credit hours. I studied engineering, one of the hardest majors at the school, and I barely slept. There were nights I finished my shift at the library at midnight, walked back to my dorm in the freezing cold, and studied until 3 a.m. for an exam. Meanwhile, Charlotte was posting Instagram photos from brunch. Living my best life, the captions said. I was living on ramen and spite. Every time I came home for the holidays, it was the same script. My parents would spend hours with Charlotte asking about her life, her feelings, her dreams. Then they'd turn to me and say, How's school, Emily? In the same flat voice you'd use to ask a stranger about the weather. And before I could answer, they'd already be looking back at her. I started coming home less, then barely at all. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Thanksgiving, my junior year. I just made Dean's List for the 3rd semester in a row. I was exhausted, broke, and proud of myself for the first time in months. I mentioned it at dinner. My dad looked up. That's great, honey. Then he immediately turned to Charlotte. So tell us about this job interview you had. Charlotte talked for 20 minutes about a position she'd never get. My Dean's List got 15 seconds. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and cried so hard I thought I'd throw up. That's when I realized nothing I did would ever be enough because I wasn't Charlotte, and to them, that was the only thing that mattered. I graduated summa cum laude at 22. I got a job at a top engineering firm in Boston, making 6 figures right out of school. I called my parents to tell them. "That's wonderful, sweetie," my mom said. Then, without even pausing, "Hey, while I have you, can you talk to Charlotte? She's really struggling after her breakup. Not congratulations, not we're proud of you. Just, can you fix your sister?" I hung up and didn't call back for 3 months. I threw myself into work, 70-hour weeks, promotions, success, and every spare dollar went to my loans. By the time I was 25, I'd paid off all $42,000. I was debt-free, successful, and angry. An anger I'd buried for years, and it was starting to consume me. That Thanksgiving, I went home out of obligation. Charlotte had moved back in with my parents, again, her 3rd time since college. "She's finding herself," my mom said on the phone. I wanted to scream. The house felt suffocating the second I walked in. My mom hugged me. "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" Then Charlotte came downstairs in designer pajamas I knew my parents bought, and my mom's whole face lit up. "Charlie, you're up. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" I felt invisible again. Just like when we were kids, I needed to print something for work, so I went into my dad's office. He and my mom were out shopping. The house was quiet. The printer jammed, so I opened his desk drawer looking for paper, and that's when I saw it. A manila folder tucked in the back, labeled "College Accounts. Final." My heart started pounding. I knew I shouldn't look, but my hands were already pulling it out. Inside were bank statements going back 15 years. The first page showed the original deposits. $50,000 for Charlotte, $50,000 for me, equal, just like they'd promised. I felt a weird surge of relief. See, they had saved the same for both of us, but then I flipped to the next page and the next, and the world tilted. Charlotte's account showed steady withdrawals over 4 years. Tuition, housing, her car, her credit cards, total $50,000, all accounted for, but my account showed something different. March, my junior year of high school, $30,000 withdrawn, note transfer to C account. October, my senior year, $12,000 withdrawn, note transfer to C account. Total $42,000. The exact amount I'd borrowed for college. They hadn't helped Charlotte with unexpected expenses. They'd stolen from me systematically, deliberately before I'd even graduated high school. And then they'd looked me in the eye and told me to take out loans. They'd watched me work myself to exhaustion for 4 years, and they never said a word. I sat there in that office holding those papers, and I felt like I was drowning all those nights I couldn't sleep, all those panic attacks during finals, all those times I skipped meals to save money. All of it had been unnecessary. I'd had the money, my money, and they'd given it to her because she deserved everything. I took photos of every page with shaking hands. Then I put the folder back exactly where I found it. I walked out of that office and stood in the hallway, my heart racing. I could hear Charlotte laughing downstairs with my mom, laughing about something I wasn't part of. I thought about confronting them right then, screaming, crying, demanding answers. But something stopped me. I needed to be smart about this. If I confronted them privately, they'd apologize. They'd make excuses. They'd beg me to keep it quiet. And part of me, the part that still wanted their love, would probably forgive them. But I didn't want to forgive them. I wanted them to face what they'd done. Publicly. In front of everyone they'd spent years pretending to be perfect for. I almost stayed silent. Almost. But then I remembered my mom's voice. "You'll figure it out. You always do." And I knew. I was done protecting them. Over the next 3 weeks, I planned everything. I called a lawyer. I asked about fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, theft. "Do you have documentation?" he asked. "Every single transaction," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Then you have a strong case, very strong." I thanked him and hung up. But I wasn't ready to sue. Not yet. because there was something I wanted to do first, something that would hurt them more than any lawsuit ever could. I wanted them to face the family. The aunts and uncles and cousins they'd spent decades impressing. I wanted everyone to know exactly who they really were. Christmas Eve arrived. The whole family gathered at my parents' house. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandmother. It was the annual showcase, the perfect family holiday. My parents loved this, and I was about to destroy it. I arrived with a small wrapped box and a smile. "You didn't have to get us anything," my mom said, beaming. "Oh, I wanted to," I said sweetly. Charlotte hugged me that morning, and for a moment, just a moment, I almost believed she cared. But then she whispered, "Thanks for not making things weird this year." And I knew she never would. Christmas morning, after all the presents were opened, I stood up. "I actually have something I want to share with everyone," I said. My mom looked confused. "Emily, honey." "It'll just take a minute," I said. I pulled out my phone and connected it to their TV. My dad's face went pale. "So, I've never told the full story about how I paid for college," I began. The room went quiet. "When I graduated high school, I was told my college fund had been mostly used up, that I'd need to take out loans, so I did. $42,000 worth." A few cousins nodded sympathetically. "I worked 2 jobs through college. I graduated with honors, got a great job, and 3 months ago I paid off the last cent." My grandmother smiled at me. "But a few weeks ago, I found something interesting." I pulled up the bank statements on the screen. Turns out my college fund was never mostly used up. It was completely full. $50,000. Just like Charlotte's. Charlotte had frozen. But before I even started college, Mom and Dad took $42,000 out of my account and transferred it to Charlotte's to pay her credit cards, to buy her a car, to cover her mistakes. The room was dead silent. And then they told me to take out loans. They watched me struggle for 4 years, and they never said a word. My grandmother's face had gone hard as stone. "But here's the part that really gets me," I continued. I pulled up an email chain I'd found buried in the folder. 2 months before I started college, Charlotte sent Dad an email. She was begging for money, said she was drowning in debt and couldn't ask for help because they'd already done so much for her. I let that sink in. And Dad replied, "Don't worry, we'll take it from Emily's fund. She won't know, and even if she finds out she's tougher than you, she'll handle it." My mother made a choking sound. Charlotte's face was white. "He knew," I said quietly. "He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't take my money because he had to. He took it because he thought I could handle the consequences." I looked directly at my father. "You sacrificed me because you didn't think I'd break." My grandmother stood up. Her voice was ice. "Is this true?" My dad couldn't look at her. My mom was crying silently. "It's all right here," I said, gesturing to the screen. "You have 30 days, I said. 30 days to pay me back every cent you stole, $42,000 plus 3 years of interest at 6%. That's $50,000 total." My dad started to speak. I cut him off. "If you don't, I'm filing a lawsuit, and I'll make sure everyone, your friends, your colleagues, everyone at your church knows exactly what you did." "Emily, please," my mom whispered. "You stole from your own daughter," I said. "And you let me suffer for years because it was easier than admitting what you'd done." I disconnected my phone. "Merry Christmas." And I walked out. My phone exploded over the next few days, texts from my parents, voicemails from Charlotte. "How could you do this to us? You're tearing this family apart. We were going to tell you eventually." But there were other messages too. From my cousins, my aunts. "We always knew something was wrong." "You were so brave." "I'm so sorry we didn't see it sooner." My grandmother called me on New Year's Eve. "I'm rewriting my will," she said simply. "They're getting nothing, but you're getting everything they should have given you years ago." I started crying. "You deserved better," she said. "And I'm sorry I didn't protect you." 29 days later, my parents' lawyer contacted mine. They'd agreed to settle $50,000, full payment, out of court. They wanted to avoid the lawsuit. I accepted. The money hit my account a week later. I stared at the balance for a long time. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like proof. Proof that I'd been right all along. Proof that they'd chosen her over me again and again. Proof that I'd never mattered the way she did. I haven't spoken to my parents since that Christmas. I blocked their numbers, skipped every family event where they'd be present. Some people think I went too far, that I should have forgiven them. That family is family, but here's what I know now. Family isn't supposed to steal from you. Family isn't supposed to watch you suffer and do nothing. Family isn't supposed to look you in the eye and lie. I took that $50,000 and invested it. It's growing now, compounding, building the future they tried to steal. I'm in therapy, I'm healing, I'm learning that I was never the problem. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel invisible. I didn't win because they paid me back. I won because I finally stopped carrying them